were in contact with Mai before, but recording in progress. Just asking because
Sorry,
she's not here yet, and normally Mai is really on time.
Mai just entered the room. So
Perfect,
she'll be here.
amazing. Just wanted to make sure that we don't start without her.
Yeah, there she is. Okay.
So I would suggest to wait 1 or 2 more minutes. And while we do so, I'm just going to give like a really brief intro to Olga, who is here with us today. She is part of the Fab Lab Barcelona team, and she is going to be our guest speaker today. For the first half of our session, today's topic is inclusive practices, and I'm really happy that Olga has time to share her expertise in her presentation with us today. So another very warm welcome to you, and also thanks for everyone who's attending today's session. It's nice to see familiar faces.
Thank you, Jess, for the introduction. I'm really looking forward to meet you all and hopefully to share some interesting thoughts at the end of the session.
Great. So as usual, we're going to record the session today as every time, just so you know, for everyone who's here, also especially for Olga, because she's new in the group. So, you know, the session will be made available afterwards for the people who are also not able to attend. As you may know, in Vietnam right now, it is 8 o'clock in the evening. So it's a bit later than for us. For us, it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So to make the content a bit more accessible, we're recording everything. And then I would suggest to slowly start. As usual, everyone is welcome to join a bit later, and I'm happy to share any information for anyone joining later. There's someone dropping in and out. Okay, so let's just go ahead. It's almost 10 past now, and I'm really happy to see you all today. As usual, it's definitely me here today, and as well our co-facilitator, who is actually just dropped out, but I hope she will be back in a second.
Sorry, she just told me her camera wasn't working, so she's gonna log out and come back again in a bit.
Perfect. Don't want to start without her. Then let's wait a moment. Let's see if she's able to rejoin. I hope it's working for her.
Hey, Mai, are you there?
Seems like having some issues. Should we wait for you? Can you write in the chat about your status quo so we know if you can hear us, because we unfortunately cannot hear you, and it would be really great to have you on board. Thanks, Shell, for writing quicker than I was able to.
Good efforts, Tina.
Can you hear us, Mai? We heard something, but I don't know what it was exactly.
I'm gonna check with her quickly outside of Zoom.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mitali.
At least there doesn't seem to be this karaoke party in the background.
That was very unfortunate last time. Poor her.
It kind of felt like we were in the wrong place. We should have been in that party instead.
But was it a karaoke party or was it actually
I
a
said so, but
music from a supermarket? I wasn't quite sure.
I wish I had that kind of supermarket close to me.
Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and reshare really quickly for the ones who just joined the Miro board in case you haven't seen it. It's always good to open it prior because there's already some content from the last week, so it might take a few minutes to load until hopefully we can solve the technical issues with Mai so she can join us 100%. Maybe while we wait, Olga can maybe give a brief introduction from her background. That would be really, really nice. And later on, then we go to the session and talk about inclusive practices. Let's do it like that, maybe.
Perfect. Thank you, Jessica, for facilitating this part of the session. So just to slowly start, I'll introduce very quickly myself. And so my name is Olga. I'm a board member of Micro Galleries, which is a global socially conscious art initiative. And you can check it online because we do a lot of beautiful initiatives that are open to audience and public to join from every part of the world. And as Jessica said, I'm working currently at the Fab Lab of Barcelona as a part of the local development researcher. And I deepen my studies towards gender studies and social justice. So as you can see, it's a very various background. And I think that for today's present that we are living, it's really important to choose your own path and create from there what your own interest. And I hope that also after today, I'm totally available to keep discussing. If any of the topics you find interesting, just feel free to reach me with any sort of questions. I'm really happy to have conversations going on.
Thank you, Olga. If you could, because normally it's my computer, is it? I don't know. For me, it sounded clear, but I have headphones, so. Olga, do you have any headphones around you that you could use to
yes, let me
make the sound a bit clearer?
Of course.
Thanks, Olga. Oh.
Can you hear me better? Not really. I see, Cynthia, that you might find some difficulties to hear me. Is it for everyone the same?
For me personally, not because, but I think it's because I'm using my headphones. So
yeah, Fab City said it was not very clear either. I don't know. I mean, I can go and get headphones as well, but I'm not sure that that's going to make a lot of difference, but I can try.
But if you cannot hear me properly, I'm gonna just try to speak slowly, try to make every word as clear as possible. So
that would be great. Thank you.
Just thank you very much for letting me know.
Thanks, Olga. I don't see Mai in the room, hence I would ask Mitali how you would like to proceed.
Maybe we can start. It seems like she's having internet issues. So I'm not really sure what's happening on her side, to be honest. If you like, we can get started, and when she joins, we can help her catch up.
Perfect.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and hope that Mai can join soon and that the problems will be resolved. As I mentioned before, and Olga has introduced herself beautifully already, we're going to talk today about inclusive practices. This will be a general introduction with some nice practical examples at the end. And the second part of the session, we will actually use the time to go back to last week's exercise, as we didn't have time to go through the exercise, which was about open source practices. And Daphne and I will be there to facilitate that part. And then, unfortunately, next week will be already our last session, in which Milena and Alessandra, two really dear colleagues of ours, will be here to talk about collaborative practices. Without further ado, because we're already a bit back in time, I would invite Olga to share her screen and to...
Không nhìn thấy gì không nhận được thấy. Ok, thì chắc là mạng của em có vấn đề đấy. Em thử kiểm tra lại.
Excuse me?
Could you see my screen? Just checking in.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. So thank you very much for being here today. First of all, because as it was already mentioned, it's a bit late in the evening. So you probably had a really long day, and I hope that today's session is going to be very relaxed for you, and you will enjoy what I'm going to talk about, and hopefully will be some new inputs, or maybe you already know some of the topics and it will be a new perspective. So let's have a look to the learning objectives and the structure of the session. We will understand the terminology and some of the key concepts to develop human-centered, compassionate, inclusive practices and strategies. As usual, when I'm in a full screen mode, I might not be able to check the chat. So if it's something very relevant and important, just feel free to open your microphone and ask the question. And if I can ask for your support, Jessica, about the chat, if they are really important, I'm just going to start, or if there are questions that we can keep for the later part, I'll be happy to answer one for all.
Thank you, Olga. I will be here watching the chat.
Thank you. As has been said, this is going to be an introductory session to inclusion and inclusive practices. So I want to make sure that everyone can start the conversation on the same page with some key concepts, key words, and hopefully after these today's sessions, this will be the foundation for your future knowledge. And we will talk about the importance of safe spaces. And we are going to do a warm-up exercise that maybe you already practiced in presence or maybe virtually, which is the privilege both. Then we are going to talk more deeply about this common understanding of keywords and concepts. And after we're going to understand why inclusivity matters and why we have to integrate it in our practice and design approach. And like has been said already previously, I'm gonna leave you with some tips, practical tools to help you to integrate this within a small or large measure in your professional life or everyday life. So I suggested to start of talking about the importance of safe places. And because when we're talking about an inclusive session, trainings or brainstorming, it's important to underline and make sure that everyone can listen and that we are coming from a place of understanding, which as I just said, it means feel free to ask open question and at the same time respect also if you don't feel comfortable enough to share, if you don't want. Whether you choose your own pace, just to just addressing each other to the way that we prefer. So if during the question and answer session, you prefer to be addressed in a more formal way and we want to keep a formal relationship, either if you feel more comfortable just to talk within your first name, and if you want to share pronounce, just make sure that we are here from the same level. We are just trying to be honest to each other and also to put ourselves in a vulnerability space. And just feel free to do mistakes and just really contribute with your own perspective. And if you see that you want to share something that you might take just longer, we are here for listening and you have all the time that you might need. So I hope that for the first takeaway of today's session is about to understand how it's important to listen to each other and try to feel in a place of understanding. So if you are going to do and to improve or integrate an inclusive session within your workspace or artistic design practice, just like make everyone feel about this safe place. And another takeaway, which is very, very important, it's about mindful communication. So just to make sure that it's about listening and be careful about the way that we talk, what we try to communicate, because it can be understood wrongly. So our intention can actually create a misunderstanding. And when we talk about inclusive model strategy, we should consider that it's always started within ourselves, our level of awareness and openness, and also our up-to-date information. And the more that we work on us, the easier it will be to create a sensitive environment that will consider others people's needs. And having this inclusive environment will be like easier steps by steps. So if hopefully also May has joined, we are ready to go back to the mirror board and start to warm up with the exercise. And if we could go, I'm going to share my mirror board, but please let's go together to, I'm going to share the mirror board from here. Always let me know if you can see the screen.
Yes, we can see the mirror board. Thank you.
Perfect. So now, if we are all ready, the mirror board has charged the content. We can go to today's session. It's going to be interactive, the mirror board. So as we can start, we can just pick one of the shape. As you've seen, there are several. Of course, there are more than the people join today's session. So just choose yours, and you can remain anonymous, so you can add your initials. For this part of the session is really not relevant. So I'm going to wait to see if there are any issues at this stage.
Does everyone have access to the mirror board? Let us know if you need access and if it's working for you.
I'm going to wait to see the mirror board starting populating before starting the exercise.
I don't think the screen share is updating because I see people have started working on the board.
Okay, now
But
I see that.
yeah, there's a little bit of lag between the screen share and the actual board.
Should I try to share my screen? Maybe it's a bit faster.
Okay.
Let's try. One moment.
So we create our players basically for the race. Is that the idea?
Unfortunately, you use the right word.
I don't know what the right words are.
So, but for today, you just need to pick the shape and you don't need to locate it. We are going to guide your life to each steps with the sentences that I'm going to read, but of course you can also read it by yourself to the right. That it will be very important to start everyone from the central column.
Yes, exactly. Just to make clear that we're all starting in the white area, so no one has to move yet anywhere. I know everyone was really excited about the race and was trying to go already in their positions. But let's try to go back into the middle space, which is the white column in the middle.
Okay, I see that everyone has picked up the shape, so I'm going to explain very briefly which are the basic rules, and is as simple as a powerful tool that I hope and I invite you to try within your own community, and to select, as you will see, some relevant sentences that can be helpful to raise some topics. So as you already done, you already picked the shape, and thank you for adding your name, your initials, or remain anonymous. That's very important. What we are going to proceed is I'm going to read the sentence, and you will feel free to move forward, so to the right of the column, or to move back to the left of the white column, based on how you identify with the statement that I read. It's also very important that if you don't feel comfortable to take a step, you can remain exactly where you are. So also the stillness, it's considered as a movement. So if you all agree, I can start with the first statement. I still see three shapes on the left side, if they can come back in the original central area.
Shape purple.
Sorry, I have a question. Are we moving left to right or top to bottom?
We're moving left to right.
Okay.
But everyone has to start in the middle, in the white space. So everyone who is T yellow shape, a yellow shape, and purple circular shape, may you please move back into the white things.
Let's see if there is someone that has picked maybe two shapes. So this one maybe are from before. No.
Perfect. Looks good now.
Okay, perfect. Maybe I still have a little bit of delay. Thank you for the feedback. So I'm going to start. I repeat, just move forward. So to your right, if you identify with what I read, and when I read another statement which says go back, so you move to the left. And if you don't know the answer, you don't feel comfortable, you just stay as you are. So I'm going to proceed with the first one, and as you can read, if you are right-handed, you can take one step forward.
Sorry, one step forward means one step to the right or one to the left?
To the right.
Okay, thank you.
And we can stay within the same first column, half of the same column, just don't go straight to the end. But you can choose your own step. Okay. Amazing. I'm going to read the second question, which is if you have more than 50 books in your household, take one step forward. Very good. I don't hear any questions, so I'm gonna keep going so we have some practice now. And if one or both of your parents have a university or college degree, you can take another step forward. You can also do some smaller steps. I see that you are going very fast. Amazing. So now, if you rely or have relied primarily on public transportation, you can take one step back. Very good. If you constantly feel unsafe working alone at night, take one step back. If your parents told you that you can be anything you want to be, you can take one step forward.
Even if it included conditions?
You can have your own interpretation about this one. If you would never think twice about calling the police when trouble occurs, you can take one step forward. If you haven't ever had to skip a meal or were hungry because there was not enough money to buy food, you can take one step back. If you have a physically visible disability, you can take one step back. If you have any invisible illness or disability, take one step back. I have, thank you for enlarging the options.
Just in case we need it.
Amazing. I think also the columns can be get wider. They're probably packed together. I'm gonna keep reading. If you haven't tried to change your appearance or behavior to fit in more, take one step back. If you have ever been terrified by someone else using stereotypes, take one step back. If you feel good about how your identities are portrayed by the media, take one step forward. If you come from a single parent household, take one step back. And we are reaching to the end of the questions. So if you live in an area with crime and drug activity, you can take one step back. If someone in your household suffered or suffers from mental illness, you can take one step back. If you were ever uncomfortable about a joke related to your race, religion, ethnicity, gender, disability, or sexual orientation, but felt unsafe to confront the situation, take one step back. So these are 18 questions. If you would like to integrate it and try to make your own privilege work as a warm-up exercise, icebreaker, you might find there are more than 50 available on the internet, but it's very important is to adapt to the situation that the community that you work on. And if you feel that you would like to share some thoughts about what we see together here on the mirror board, I'm available to hear your thoughts and perspective. Just remember that we are just here to see how we feel about this. So there is absolutely no judgment. It's also about surprising ourselves about things that we didn't know. You can write in the chat, you can open your microphone in relation to the connection that is available and what you feel more comfortable, the way to share your thoughts. It can also be some previous experience that you already had about this exercise. Was it the first time you done it? Have you heard about it? Just take this couple of minutes before starting the session, just to share with us how you felt about it. Was just to warm up, there were some reflections. It's really, it can be practical, like feedback. It can also be more personal.
I'm just gonna share a bit from my side. I've done this exercise before at a conference a year ago. And back then we were quite a big group of people, also from all over Europe and beyond. And it was quite interesting to see how we moved as a group at some specific questions, and everyone was moving towards the same direction. And then some questions were making a quite big differentiation in where you move in. So I think it's quite nice to see the diversity of backgrounds we had also today, which is quite interesting to see. I think it's always a very nice exercise to do from my personal point of view. It grounds you a bit.
Thank you for sharing. We have a message from Mike in the chat.
Hi, I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can. Hello, Mai.
Perfect. I was trying to say something before, but I think you didn't react at all, so I guess that didn't work. This is a really interesting exercise. I've never done this before, and I think there are questions in here that really make you think about, where you are and how privileged one can be. I think this could be really useful for some workshops that I facilitate, just so we get to understand everyone in the group a bit more. Because things like this you will almost never discuss in a normal setting, for example. Thank you for sharing. Super interesting.
Thank you for sharing. If you will implement it within your workshop, I will be curious to know how it goes. And as of course, it will be in person, it will be different. Just like the physical part of this exercise, it will be very relevant. And it will be available here on the Miro board. So also if in the future for your next exercises you want to go back on this and reflect on the position that the shapes, where the shapes are, I hope that it will be also an input for what you're going to do during the next months. If anyone feels to share someone else, like we can go back to the presentation. And if you don't feel to share it now, but you are going to have more questions at the end of the session, we are going to discuss it, everything together. So I'm going to ask you to stop the sharing of the screen. I'm going to share mine again.
Yes, of course. Bear in mind, we have like around 15 minutes, more or less, for the rest of the presentation.
I'll try
just so you
best.
know. No worries. Take your time, but just letting you know. So we have enough time after also for any questions that might come. So don't worry.
I'm going to go here. I hope that you can see my screen.
It's loading.
It's loading.
So while the slides are being loaded, maybe it's a thought that just crossed my mind, which is, would it be better to do this exercise anonymously?
I don't know if you actually joined later, but absolutely this was one of the conditions. it was about feeling free to put their own initials. So actually taking also responsibility about what someone wants to share as their own experience, but of course to keep it anonymous needed. Some of these sessions are actually done in the dark with the people just holding a light, also for allowing this exercise to be in present, but don't feel judged by the people around you. So thank you for raising this question. It's very, very important for this specific exercise about how people feel about sharing really personal aspects of their own life.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. And I'm going now to go a little bit quicker, but I hope that what I'm going to share with you, it will be, as we say, this foundation. And for me, it's really important to create a common understanding. So actually to understand what we mean by these keywords as equality, diversity, inclusion, discrimination, unconscious bias, stereotyping, and labeling. And it's important that we become more familiar, because as soon as we understand the meaning, we can start to use it in our language, and by using it with more familiarity, we can also have a better impact in society. And one of the very important understanding is that everyone has many identities, and this usually involves many different identity-based factors like language, gender, age, culture, religious affiliation, sexual orientation, ethnicity, ability, and also socioeconomic status. And all of these are identities. Some of them are can be seen more easily than others, but we should consider that as identity, we should also have these capabilities, needs, and aspirations that are really different from one to each other. As equality, and I think it's really important to start from this word, we mean equal right to equal opportunity to be treated without discrimination. Everyone needs to have the same chance, and this is a direct link to diversity. So diversity should be understood as all the many forms of diversity within different communities and within the same communities. And we have to understand in which context the diversity are taking place and which different identities are just seen from the other people. So it's important that when we do a project, we start to brainstorming, we can bring as many diverse people together in order to have a positive elements that comes from all these new perspectives, views, and ideas. And only when we have this really inclusive environment, we can really help society to grow healthier and better. And when we have a good balance between equality and diversity, we really have an inclusive environment. That it's what this session, and of course, if you are here, you are interested about. And what is an inclusive environment? Is where everyone feels welcome and safe to speak freely and to contribute. And from a community developer, these gaps are really crucial, because they are the gaps that we want to explore. And if we are designer, there are also the gaps in the market that we want to try to solve. And if we want to take some small takeaway from this session, we just should remember that inclusion is a way of thinking and acting that allows everyone to feel accepted, valued, and safe. So if we should keep like anonymous, like we were saying, we should accept that. We just need to acknowledge what is a safe environment and just try to create it. And other key words that I think we hear very often, it's discrimination, unconscious bias, stereotyping, and labeling. And as we've seen for the other three, they are all linked together. because of discrimination, it means being discriminating because of the diversity of these identity-based factors that we have seen previously, but also being discriminated by some fundamental rights into society. And what it happens that discrimination covers a number of unconscious bias, which, as you know, are those mental shortcuts that try to make sense of the world in the absence or not acceptance of facts. And when we leave this unconscious bias to leading our mind, we just go straight to stereotyping. And we stereotype based on our assumptions that everyone is the same. And this stereotyping just directly linked to labeling. And labeling is the last step that we should really be aware of, because it really goes against an individual or a group based on their identity. And from this, we just really see how this labeling can have some extremism and violence impact on society. I'm just going to leave you in the slide, and if you wanted to go a little bit deeper, just we have to consider there are really different kind of discriminations that we have to consider, because they are part of our daily life and very often are unconscious. So when we approach any sort of process and approach, and we really feel that our unconscious bias is making us creating wrong assumptions, so we really should step back and if we are not able to do it by ourselves, just hear different voices in the process and just get new perspectives, because are really crucial. And another takeaway is that it's normal to be diverse, and we have to create an inclusive mindset just to understand and to represent, of course, if you are a designer, the world that we live. And we need to really to look for a world where everyone can thrive, because if the diversity is a fact, inclusion should be an action. And I'm going to the two last parts. I hope that we are within the time that we said. And for doing this, just remember, as we say now, we are many identities, and we have diverse identities also throughout our life. So to be inclusive now, we might be also be inclusive to ourselves in the future. And to approach inclusive practice and to enhance inclusive strategy, we want to create a methodology that is human-centered. And this means including and learning from as many people as possible. So just remember that when we do an inclusive approach, we should learn acknowledge that not everyone is the same. And for this specific reason, we wanted to integrate as many people as possible in the professional practice and everyday life. So when we consider target groups, or we want to do some tester poll, just don't always think about the tester that we have in mind, the target group that we are considering, but also be open and welcome perspective from groups that they are not within our target, which I know that goes against most of the design principles that we've been taught during our life, but it's important to be up to date with information, and to integrate the inclusive practices, we also need to be open to different voices. And just remember that every decision we take, which might be design related, or if you're working within a community, has the potential to include or exclude. So we should, going back to the first part of the session, just remember that it's so important to have a mindful communication, whether we are listening, whether we are communicating, and also be open to share our experience within an eye without assuming that it's the same for all the other people that are sharing the same process as we are. The next steps that I wanted to leave you to think about is how to integrate inclusivity as part of your professional life, your everyday life. And it's just to keep these 4 concepts just rolling over your head, just getting really familiar with this in order to pick up all the signals. So first of all, we had this short list about what diversity means, and we should really have a common understanding which can be integrated within ourselves. So we need to understand what diversity means, how can also be evolving through the years. So just to keep having trainings, keep reading, and understand how diversity also changes. And second is recognize exclusion. So recognize exclusion when it's contextual or situational, because exclusion happens when we try to solve problems using our own biases. And we need to be careful of these biases because are the ones that we want to challenge. So we want to challenge our stereotypes, our prejudice, our how we are influenced from the media. And just to keep in mind that the stereotypes and assumptions that really work through mental mechanisms. So they have a direct impact in the way that we interact with others and the way we think the world surrounding us. So just try to avoid assumptions because it's one of the most common mistakes in everyday interactions. And they are also very difficult to spot because we are just taking granted that our people just surrounding us, they might be just very similar because we just get along better. And by doing this, we are not open or we are negatively affected by people that are not similar to us, but they can actually contribute with the really relevant information or insights. And if we wanted to work as a designer or community leader, just to try to recognize this moment when any of the 4 actually really affect our decision-making process, because they are going to change completely the way that we see the world. And the only way that we can try to avoid this is just to learn from each other, to diversity, and try to implement every people that we can from a diversity background in our designing process or planning process. So just don't try to guess, but we just really need to be open to other voices. I hope that I was within the time. I ran little, but of course now I'm available for discussing with you all.
Thank you very much, Olga, for sharing this amazing presentation about inclusive practices. If there are any questions, feel free to share them in the chat. I'm also going to share now the link to the presentation in which you see all the topics Olga has been talking about, plus the translation, in case there are any questions.
If you want to be more clear about the checklist, just to make sure I understand what you mean.
Yeah, no, I was thinking, thank you very much for the presentation. When you're busy doing something, you tend to forget what's around you, and simple things. I need checklists to see if I do everything in the correct order in creating a travel request or whatever. So I was wondering if you would have perhaps a similar checklist when I'm working on a project. will this product work for a left-hander? That's kind of easy now that we did this exercise, and I'm right-handed, so I might not have thought about it. So if you would have some kind of tool like that you could share, and you can put it on the wall, and then, okay, yeah, no, I should think of this one, no?
Well, thank you very much for the question, because it was actually like the last tool that I was a bit skipping if we were running out of time. So there is this tool which is called the designated dissenter. So unfortunately, it's going to be included in the slide, so you can read it properly with your own time. And I'm going to share also the methodology of the designated dissenter, which is unfortunately, as you were mentioning, this person that really needed to contradict everyone else in the room. Just keep in mind whatever is someone saying, or just like in any of the process, that is what is really important, that it can be applied to the design process, but also to when we are taking decisions, or we are planning for a different kind of projects. So just designating one person for each project or ideas, just try to contradict everything. So which kind of assumptions we are making? I'm just going to share the slide so you will see what I mean. So what are we assuming? Is it consciously or unconsciously? Are these assumptions wrong, or they actually reflect that we are the community and the people that I'm trying to address? Is it my own individual assumption, or is within the group and collaborating the assumptions? And what is the outcome if I'm wrong? So these are only 3 questions that for presentation reason I thought to share with you, but as you were mentioning, there are several, and I can share with you the complete tools in order to have this checklist just in mind, in order that you are not working within a team. So you can be your own designated dissenter. But just keep in mind that it's important also to have the ideas to go their own way, and then just doing the checklist, also taking a step back.
Thanks, Shell, for bringing the checklist up. I think it's a useful, very useful thing to have. I was wondering if you have you seen any Fab Labs or maker spaces that you think is inclusive? And what do they do in that case? You know, like what are the good practices that we can learn from?
I think I can also open the question as well to Jessica, which has more information about Fab Labs. But as I said from the beginning, it's really a process. So diversity is something that it should really be open to discussion and transformation. So we really have to think also within ourselves how we identify, which many identities reflect. We can be some certain of identities at one stage of our life, and they can be transformed. And it's also, if we think about like a community within your own office, when you step out in the streets, when you go out within friends, how your identities reflect and integrate to each other. And I think Jessica shared a really important example of this.
Yes, actually, it depends a bit on the Fab Lab and Makerspace, because it could be inclusive in many different ways. So a makerspace could be, for example, very accessible because it doesn't have any membership fees, and it's a public makerspace and anyone could make anything at that makerspace. That could be one type of being accessible and being inclusive. Another type is the example I have shared, is Happy Lab Vienna, which is a Fab Lab / makerspace in Vienna that has strategies in place to include female makers in their makerspace. So they had, for example, in the month of May, it was completely dedicated only for women in their makerspace, to create safe spaces to represent the female maker community, and to give access to several female makers that don't have the financial means to actually be part of a makerspace, and to validate the work that is maybe not often labeled as making. So for example, knitting, making food, working with fabrics. Oftentimes female identifying people do not see this as a making practice because it's not high tech. However, they specifically work on validating this and ensuring that there's this language change about how we see making in different ways, and making it just as valid as using a CNC machine. So there are several. I wanted to share the other example, which is the Ateneo de Fabricación. This is the space for fabrication in Barcelona, for example, which is from the municipality. I'm sorry, this website will be in Spanish/Catalan, but it's just another example of these. For example, the Ateneo de Fabricación is an open makerspace where you do not have to pay membership fees, but it's based off value exchange. So if there is someone who knows a specific skill or how to use a specific machine, they obligate themselves that they will share this with another person in the makerspace. So they don't have to pay for being there, but if there's someone, say, I want to know how to use a specific material in the 3D printer, then they can see who in the makerspace has this knowledge, and then there's this value exchange based on knowledge rather than on having a monetary exchange. So yeah, it can take different shapes.
Yeah, really interesting. So right now in our Fab Lab, there's some internship programs for high school, and there's a lot of female students that sign up for the programs. So now they learning how to do wiring, how to program Arduino and things like that. Yeah.
That is amazing to hear. There's also a whole initiative which is just about female electronics. I would have to look that up, but we're going to go on a bio break in a moment, and I will look up that might be also interesting for someone to see that example. Are there any more questions while Olga is still here? If they might not come up now, you're also more than invited to share them after in the email, however you feel like.
And from your questions, I'm going also to upload in the Miro board in order to help you with this checklist and to make this inclusive process easier to be included in your daily practice.
Thank you.
Thanks. Then I would suggest let's go for a 5 to 10 minutes, let's say 10-minute bio break, which means 9:20 we will come together again. And then we'll do the last bit of the session, which is talking again about open source, a bit from last week. And it's again a practical exercise. For that, either Mitali, Mai, or me will create a breakout room for the participants of the Academy to work together on one Miro board, but I will explain that later on. So I'll see you in 10 minutes. See you.
Thank you. Mọi người ơi, bây giờ mình break 10 phút nha.
Thank you, Mitali, for starting the recording again, or Mai, whoever has been doing that. Then Mitali. I would, thanks, Mitali, thanks. Then I would suggest we go to the second part of our session, which is about the open source practices. I'm just gonna share my screen. I'm gonna go to last week's session. So last week, we already talked about open source practices together with Oscar and Guillaume. You may remember this meter board, which I briefly shared at the start. And also some of the inspiration, tools, methods from Guillaume and Oscar, which they shared also during the session. So you'll find all of those in here. And also from Mai, I think Mai, you have shared this open knit machine. So we added this in here as well. And what we will do today is a collective exercise about how to put into practice or how to think about open source in combination with your projects. I just see that for some reason this has moved. I would like to invite Daphne to briefly talk us through the exercise, if you may.
Yes, give me a moment because the mirror board is not loading very well.
Otherwise, I'm sharing it also in the screen if you want to check it out there.
Yeah, so I'm gonna see it from your screen. This exercise is to reflect more open source practices, and I think we agreed to do it for the project that they selected the previous week now. So you can go through the value dimensions canvas and kind of see the different factors that characterize a project as open source, because open source can mean a variety of things that can include some open source practices but not others. So that's why in this canvas there is the let's say points total fully open source project meter, the OpenOmeter. Okay. And it would be nice to take the project that you were working on the last time and try to reflect on the ways on which this project is open source and kind of tick all of the boxes that you think it's ticking, or maybe also criticize and comment on how it could be more open source, etc. So one canvas is more to get an idea of what we mean with an open source practice, and the other one you can actually start making comments. I actually see the one in Vietnamese, so
So
the English one.
should we go first for the first 10 minutes, all of the participants maybe in one breakout room and first choose one of the projects, or each one can choose one project and go through the value dimensions, and then we come back together? Does that sound good?
Do you want us to make breakout rooms? You're fine with talking here? Like, let us know.
I think we could have 2 breakout rooms.
Perfect.
We're 10. Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Are
Are
you
you
able to do the breakout? Yeah, sorry.
I was gonna ask the same question. Do you want me to do them?
Yeah, that would be great.
Create
Yes.
2 breakout rooms. So I'm gonna do the option with let the participants choose the room.
Perfect. Thank you, Mitali.
No problem. There's a comment from Cynthia saying not clear on what we're doing.
Okay, so I can re-explain. So you see this canvas here, and we would invite you to take one of the examples that we talked about last week, the week before. So for example, this project, or whichever project is your own project, and then reflect upon the questions that you see here. So for example, Guillaume and Oscar talked about smart citizen. So that's why I added here smart citizen. And then you read the question, does smart citizen allow free redistribution of the full product also for commercial purposes? Yes or no? So you can check the box if it's a yes. Or does smart citizen publish the bill of materials in its editable version? So if it's a yes, then I add another checkbox there. So afterwards, you will see that based on the questions, how many of the answers were answered with yes. And the more questions are answered with yes, the higher is the score on how open source it is. So for example, Smart Citizen has, let's say theoretically, 8 questions correct or like answered with yes. So it's quite high in score if it's open source. I would put it like around here, let's say like that. And you can make some comments about it, why something could be done better. And then furthermore, you can look at these like value dimensions that you could discuss as a group that should be done better. Or so for example, the project is validated with the community, or it's based on knowledge of global innovators. So this is all things to take into consideration when talking about open source. And that can be done as a group, so you can discuss in a group. And it might be more nicer to discuss it as a group. Does that make it clearer? You can use for this your own project, or you can use one of the existing projects.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, great. And then after 10 minutes, we would come back together and we will do the second part, which is talking about the same project in like a discussion round, which you can see over here. But let's do the first one first. And as soon as Mitali is ready with the breakout rooms, we can go ahead. I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, everyone should be able to join one of the rooms now. Jess and Daph, you're in like different rooms right now.
Thank you.
Mọi người ơi, bây giờ mình sẽ chia ra để làm bài tập nhóm. Có 2 phòng breakout room á. Mọi người xem cái nút ở bên cạnh cái chỗ cái mặt người á. Breakout room thì mình có thể chọn vào room nào cũng được. Bấm nút join để vào phòng nha. Hữu An ơi, Hữu An với Hường có thể vào phòng á. Mọi người có thấy cái nút breakout room không?
Dạ đây em vừa thấy, em vào một.
Ok. Tới có cần hỗ trợ không? Bạn có thấy cái nút breakout room không?
Em có thấy ạ.
Ok.
Đó.
Vậy mình có thể vào phòng 2 hoặc là phòng 1. Mình nhấn cái nút breakout xong chọn phòng rồi bấm join nha.
Đấy.
Ok. Nội dung hôm nay em có hiểu có chỗ nào khó hiểu không?
Dạ không, em gần như là follow được hết.
Ok, vậy thì tốt quá.
Bây giờ mình sẽ phải thảo luận để làm cái bài tập nhóm này đúng rồi.
Cái bài tập thì em có mở được mirror không?
Em mở được.
Bây giờ mình sẽ làm cái bài tập về open source practice mà tuần trước không có thời gian làm á. Thì mình sẽ chọn một cái bảng và một cái sản phẩm hay là project và mình đánh giá nó theo cái thang thước đo open source.
Em đang ở trong mirror, chắc chị với mọi người ở trong đấy chưa?
Có, chị đang mở này. Chị nghĩ là mình có thể chọn cái nào cũng được. Cũng có thể chọn cái project gì đấy của open source của Makerville.
Let me know if you have any questions. I don't speak Vietnamese, so I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm here.
Thanks, Stephanie. I'm just going through the instructions on again. So now we are looking at the projects. Mình có chị nghĩ là mình có thể lấy cái ví dụ in 3D á, cái đèn in 3D.
Cái
Cái
solar.
upgrade
Em thấy ạ.
Cái ví dụ
Ok.
của upgradera của IKEA cũng hay á. Mà ở Maker Việt mình thì có hay in 3D không?
Có, thi thoảng có mấy cái mà cần nhiều sẽ in, chung là cũng chạy thường xuyên, máy cũng chạy thường xuyên.
Vậy em chọn cái nào?
Em nghĩ là cái này ok, mình sẽ thử đánh giá để nó theo những cái. Vâng.
Okay. So yeah, we're looking at the example of upgradera.
Okay.
So we should make a copy of the value dimensions board, right?
Okay. I'm going to the mirror board. It's a bit slow.
An ơi, theo chị hiểu là mình đánh dấu xong rồi mình cộng lại á. Đánh dấu tích.
Chứ cái này nó không có bản gốc câu hỏi tiếng Anh, chỉ có mấy cái mà em thực ra là kiểu cái cách dịch nó hơi bị khó hiểu chút. Cái câu hỏi gốc ấy ạ.
Cái câu hỏi gốc vậy chắc là để chị copy lại cái bản tiếng Anh đi. Cái bản tiếng Việt chị cũng quen tiếng Anh.
Có một số thuật ngữ mà dịch nó tự động dịch nên là hóa đơn tài liệu theo em hiểu là bill of material đúng không?
Đúng rồi. Dịch. Rồi chị làm một cái khác có tiếng Anh đó.
Dạ vâng.
Cái câu thứ ba thì chị nghĩ là có, vì giống như là cái bạn này bạn thiết kế thêm những cái phần mà có thể in 3D xong mọi người tự download về tự in á.
Thì cái này hoàn toàn là có thể được.
Ừ.
Cái for commercial purpose thì em chưa nhìn thấy ở đâu. Non commercial đương nhiên là được.
Ừ, chị nghĩ có. Sorry, our group was too slow. We haven't finished.
No worries. We haven't quite finished neither, but that's no big deal. That's okay. We can always use more time. So without further ado, I'm just gonna share my screen. Did it work more or less okay, Mai, in your group? How did it go? Mai?
Yeah, we picked the example of the hacks that can be 3D printed for IKEA products to extend their use of functions. Yeah.
Great. Amazing. Cynthia, I think, has chosen the loft bag for us, for our group, which was really nice. So we went through that one. So I would suggest to do, like, in the end, a little wrap up moment. So I'm just going to explain the next part of the exercise, which is here. I think there's a bit of a mess over here, so I'm just going to go back to this part of the So this part is actually very useful for you to use as a canvas when you have your own project. So normally when you have your own project and thinking about how you can make it open source or what parts of it you want to make it open source, you can go through these steps to get, like, the thought process going on. So when you have a product, you can then think about, for example, you have a backpack. You want to make parts of that backpack design open source. So we saw in our case, for example, that the instructions and the design files are already open source, which is quite nice. But then there are some other parts which, for example, are not open source, is how you can edit or contribute to new adaptations or iterations or material that you're choosing for the design. So there's, like, a differentiation there. So this is only a one-way open source design, let's say it like that. So there's no exchange in contribution. And in that sense, you could go with your own project through these steps to do the same, to say, okay, what part would I like to what part would I like to make open source? What possible actions are intertwined with that? So what can the stakeholders do with that? So that question relates to what we've just seen here. So can other people take your open source project and use it for themselves for commercial use, or is it only allowed to be used in a sense for open education, for being replicable? So there's a differentiation you can make between using an open source project only for educational purposes, or the other person can also use it for commercial purposes. So that is what can be discussed here. And then going back to this, how can you benefit from that? So for example, what does it make sense for you to make a part of your project open source? Because then afterwards you can make the machine design even better than before. That is a possible option here. And how do stakeholders again benefit from that? So it goes like back and forth about thinking about how other people benefit, how you benefit. So for example, talking the machine possibility again is like, I make my machine design open source. People can use that machine design, can also for commercial purposes, they can feed back, which is good for me because then my machine design is better or more advanced, which is then yet again good for other stakeholders if they see these advancements, because then they're not using machine design version 1, but they can use machine design version 3 or 4, which might already have better safety aspects to it, or might have really good how-to tutorials, or have to like other aspects of it. So it's nice to see like these iterations of how you benefit, how other people benefit from making things open source. And then just to think about like external aspects and exchange streams, you can see, for example, here, what platforms do you use? For example, we've seen in our case, Loftback uses Wikifactory. So that is some of the things that you can use here as an example. And then the last one is the most difficult one with open source is, what kind of value exchange can be happening? Is it knowledge? Is it skills? Is it a monetary exchange, etc., etc.? So let's use the last 10 minutes to either use your personal project to go through these topics. It can be very hypothetical, or we can also use the same example. For example, we use the Loftback to think about what could be possible benefits for you and for other stakeholders. Is this more or less clear? Good. Then Mitali, could you bring us back into the breakout rooms if that's possible?
Sure.
Amazing. Thank you.
Just give me 1 second. Okay, I think they're open now.
Bây giờ mình có thể vào cái phòng breakout room lại nha mọi người. Mình làm bài tập về open source.
Well, I'm happy I said that before the recording started.
I just wanted to say the same.
Sorry, was I supposed to not started?
No. All good. Again, I'm gonna bring one of the English
Sure.
English canvases over here. Just gonna take this out and then make this not movable, so we have a bit more freedom. So again, we use the Loftback's example. Do you want to use this, or does anyone like to? Sure. Is that working for you?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. So
unless there's something he wants to do it with. Sorry.
So we can already think about what they already opened up in this case, because we know what they opened up based on the exercise that we've done before, which was the bill of materials and the assembly instructions. So maybe we can add those.
Yeah, and they're things that most things have as open source, aren't they, really?
Is there something else I should add to this?
The overall design, I suppose.
Excuse me?
The overall design, how to cut your pieces.
No, they cut the piece. Oh well. Yeah, well, in general, that when they're doing, they actually provide the cut pieces for you. They don't.
Okay.
I guess they do. Maybe they do in that the other thing, because they've got the outline.
The patterns, right?
Yeah. So.
Great. Anything else that's missing?
I'm in the wrong way. I think I'm going to go back. Sorry.
So let's move to the next question. What possible actions can external people do with this opened elements? In this case, I think they can do themselves.
They can make bags.
Yeah. DIY. Yeah.
I mean, it looked like even I could do one if I had a sewing machine.
Anything's possible.
Of course, I need a sail too, but that's.
Yeah, well, they will provide you with that too.
Yeah.
And I guess, yes, and anybody could, based on the assembly instructions, I guess they could cut their own version of it in any other fabric as well.
Right.
So that's possible.
Like different materials.
Yeah.
Okay. But in this case, as we mentioned before, that cannot feed back through Wikifactory design proposals. So it's only one way. I don't see anything. There's a lot of content here, but nothing about that. Okay. Yeah. So what does that mean for me, for us, as the supposed designer right now of this project? Do we benefit in? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, it's kind of all about intention, isn't it, really? Because a lot of, I mean, all of these elements are elements that are going to be involved in any kind of design and usage, and if it's a kind of kit or whatever, it's all going to be there. But it's about your intention, the designer's intention, as to whether they want, how they want it to go out into. It's not even necessarily the marketplace, but out into the world, and whether they want to share all of that information and also get some form of feedback or assistance in terms of the user ends. I mean, it's kind of like people making products and then sending out, and then previous times sending out a kind of feedback survey or whatever on the end user and how they found the use of the product and what it did and blah 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 blah. I mean, this is kind of a much more I guess it is that now it's being done with intent, but also again, I'm not quite sure how to explain it.
On the other hand, perhaps he is getting feedback on his YouTube videos in the comment fields, that kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
And also maybe the designer has a need to share a way of making use of old yacht sails. That could also be a motivation, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a really nice project in general, thinking about reusing the old sails. I mean, that's a nice circular approach.
I actually thought they would rip after a while and then maybe they are beyond repair, but it seemed to recall that they are trying to repair the sails as well, but maybe these are the old cotton or I don't know what type of material.
And that's all synthetic.
Now, these days must be all synthetic for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Can you even repair them, or are they beyond repair if they rip?
No, they can be repaired. I mean, it's also about where they cut and if they layer and do other things with it or fuse. I mean, there's other options to deal with it. So
I mean, some materials, if you have a small rip in it, they are beyond repair. It's simply
That's-
because of the structure.
Yeah. But well, in general, manufacturers would like you to think they're beyond repair, but in general,
Okay.
trust me, they're usually not. It's usually
no.
it can be repaired, maybe not in a invisible way or whatever, but it's still.
I'm thinking of a glass. If you drop it in the floor, then you have a 3D puzzle you can't really deal with.
But with a glass thing, you can send it back into recycling and it can come back in another form of a glass. Whereas
Right.
the things maybe not so much. Yeah. But I guess I'm just trying to get my head around how the differences between an open source process and a non-open source process, and just in terms of the in how it works, and I guess for me it seems that I go back to it's the intention, and it's the intention of the users and everybody being involved in the process in some form, and that the designer, because normally from a designer point of view, although not in my case, but once the designer makes the product or designs the product, often they're not involved in the making of the product, and they're certainly not involved in how it's being used.
Yeah.
Whereas this means that the designer has ownership in how it's being used, and also the user has ownership in how it's being designed or maybe modified for the end user, for the demo track, which I think is incredibly beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, if you buy some stuff in H&M, you can't really go to the counter and say, look, I have an idea on how to change this sweater.
But you wouldn't be in H&M.
Well, any kind of fashion.
Yeah, no. Anyway, yeah, let's not go there. Yeah, I mean, I think when you're doing something like, the people that I make things for, if there is a wear and tear issue, then they bring it back for the most part, unless of course they're not in the country, for repairs and maintenance, and people, I do get feedback on, okay, I really like this design, or I don't like this design, or I think it would be better like this. I mean, of course, you still have to, I guess, navigate that, because some people just want things made specifically for them, which is not necessarily going to work for critical mass. But
oh, that's true. I mean, customization, because the customer wants a special.
But that's also possible. I mean, yeah, but I mean, I think that's the whole idea of open source, isn't it? In the sense that well, depending if it is open source, then there is that opportunity for customization.
But isn't that the direction where manufacturing is going by and large? I remember this fantastic quote from, was it Henry Ford? You can have this car in any color you want, as long as it's black. It's like, now that's a good one. If you want to buy a car, I don't have a car, but there are like 50 extras that you can pick and choose if you want this and that and blah, blah, blah. And we're way, way advanced in customization already on the order, right?
Yes, but it's restricted customization based on what they think people actually want. So it's not, and it's what they can do easily to make the customer feel like they're getting a unique thing, whereas in fact they're not getting anything unique at all.
Yeah, no, that's correct. Yeah. I can't change the cylinder volume in the engine and these kind of things.
No, exactly. Although in some cases, maybe you can go for a 6-cylinder version or an 8-cylinder version if you really want.
I want to have 5.
You need matching pairs. All right, gonna work.
So yeah, we're missing out on the interesting part here, how to benefit. Huh?
No worries. I think this was a really nice conversation. I mean, yes, how to benefit, these are the next bits and channels for exchange, but maybe this has to be taken to another day's conversation because it's already past 10 in your case. So to be a bit respectful of the time, I think we have to wrap up the session. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for participating in this session, in these breakout rooms. As always, it's not enough time. I think especially when the conversations are starting, it becomes very interesting, and then we could just take time only for that. In any case, you will have the design contest happening very soon, and there you will have way more time to interact with the ones you already know here, but also with more people that will participate, hopefully. So before leaving, and I know it's already past the time, so please bear with me just another 5 more minutes. I think either Mitali or Mai wanted to share the design contest that is happening, which we started co-creating the theme last week. And I think the rest of the team has finalized all these brilliant ideas that came up into something, a really nice theme. So Mai, would you like to share it, or is it not yet time for it to share? Let me know.
Mitali, should I review the theme?
Sure, I can